Okay, we're resuming the April meeting for the Hampton News Ship Model Society. We just concluded the business portion, and now we're on to show and tell. And due to lots of whining in the past, we're going to start with Sean so that he doesn't have to go after Gene this time. Sean, do you have anything to share today?
Thanks for that, Greg. I appreciate that. Totally. But well deserved, so thank you.
Gene's a tough guy to follow.
He is.
He's testing this year.
Oh,
So it's good.
yeah, that's right. Bear with me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to spotlight people during show and tell. So if you're sharing something, it doesn't matter. But if you're holding it up, it does. Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, so this is my ongoing build of Siren. So I started this last 2 months because I wasn't at the last month's meeting. I started tree nailing the hull where I'm going to leave it natural, like the picture I'm trying to follow. So in this picture, you'll see that I've started putting in all the little tiny tree nails. These tree nails are a drill size 75, so they're extremely small. What you see in this picture is just a very small portion of what I had to make to do the hull. Not sure why it came in the wrong way, but you can see the two draw plates that I'm using to make the tree nails. I don't know if this will work on the slide or not.
What kind of wood are you using for the tree nails?
So the tree nails that I'm using on this project are cherry. I tried using bamboo, but this is the size right here that I'm actually trying to get them down to. And you can see the little pieces here. That didn't work well with the bamboo. It was splitting too much. Even with the cherry being a hardwood, I would start with a 6-inch piece and end up with, in some cases, only a 2-inch piece. So quite a bit of waste has been established, but most of this stuff is just cast off scrap pieces of cherry from other projects. So some of it started off as a very small little triangular piece that then, I pulled down into a round dowel. Some of them were square stock. But I would just sit there at night and run off 4 or 5 of them until the point where my fingers would start getting really sore from trying to grip the really small piece, trying to drag it through the plates. But I used 2 different plates. I used this draw plate that's specifically made for that. And then I have a cheap eBay version that I use. I use the eBay version because with the ship modeler's drill plate, drawing it through, I would start getting a little bit of a wave in the dowel, and it would be a little rough. The thicker draw plate allows me to go through the same diameter hole, and it would smooth it out a little bit so that I could then go back to the small plate and draw through. And I found the technique to work pretty well, where on occasion I can actually get down to a 75 drill size with a 6-inch piece of dowel. But what you see in the picture is probably 1/10 of what I needed for just the clear portion or the natural portion of the hull that I'm going to leave. I haven't decided if I'm going to do the doweling for the whales or the shear plank yet, as those are going to be painted black. I haven't decided if I'm going to do them. I do believe if I do them, they will show through the paint a little bit, which is, I think, the technique I want, but I haven't gotten there yet.
This question, you said your fingers got sore.
Yes.
Right? Were you pulling it with your fingers?
A combination of my fingers and a needle nose plier with serrated edge on it to drag. And the reason I don't always use the needle nose is because it would crush the wood.
Well, let me suggest something. Can you see this?
Yeah, I think you can see them.
Can you guys see these
Let me,
parallel jaw pliers?
If I stop sharing, maybe.
Yeah, I can see them.
Bob Comet had it when he made his where's the
Yeah.
When he made his tree nails, he used parallel jaw pliers, and he glued a piece of thin leather to the inside of both jaws so that it wouldn't crush the material that he was using for his tree nails. So that would be my suggestion to keep your fingers from being sore.
Nice. Oh, I'll have to look on for one. Thanks. Thank you. There we go back.
Sean, question. The
Yeah.
78 size bit or a drill bit, what is that in terms of diameter? Inches?
It's about 0.4 millimeters, I believe it is.
Okay.
75.
all right, on that note, I'm gonna interrupt Sean just long enough to answer Gene's question a different way. For the sake of
0.3.
on the shop notes.
0.021 inches.
0.3, Gene.
0.5.
Or
On the-
0.5. Oh,
On our
0.5.
on our website, we've got in the shop notes a drill bit chart. So there you go. If you ever want to know the diameter of the numbered drill bit
0.5.
or any of the,
Yeah, first
all of them are in here,
7 inches.
including the lettered bits.
Do you know how much work that is to log in and have to look that up?
You don't have to log in to see this. You don't have to log in. This is open and free to the public.
No, great. No, I like that.
And then print it out. I should have a PDF added in here so you can print it out.
All right, cool.
All right, back to you, Sean. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. So yeah, 0.5 millimeters, Gene. All right, so that's what I've been working on for the tree nail. So here's the overall hull of Siren. So some close-ups, you can now see the starboard side. I have completely tree nailed the area that is going to be left clear. I still have some finish sanding to do on it.
Healthy girl.
But then you can see as I'm going down the length of the hull, all the tree nails that I put in, both the joints and where they cross the frame.
Your joinery looks great.
Thank you. You can see where I did put the scarfs in for where the whales are, and also the shear plank. Again, you can see the camera doesn't lie. I do have to do a little bit more finish sanding. In this view, you can see where I've started to put in the filler pieces for the cap rail that will come down across the counter. So I've now put those in. I have attempted now 8 times to bend 1/16 by 1/4 maple to form around the full length of the stern and then down the counter where the filler pieces are. So trying to steam it all the way across and around. I've tried 8 times, and 8 times it's now has splintered on me. The 8th time, I thought I was nearly there. I got it to form around the extreme edges of the counter, and I started to try, if you look at the previous picture, the counter kind of flares into the hull. So not only does it have a very strong bend around the top, but it also flares in. And as I was trying to attempt to get it to flare in, it split again. I think part of my problem is it takes a lot of effort to try to bend it around the model itself. So I think my 9th attempt, I'm going to actually make a form off model of what I need, and then steam the plank again and try to form it off the model where I can get in and maybe manipulate it faster so that the wood doesn't start to dry out or cool off, and maybe it'll retain its shape.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
How are you going to finish the plank, the wood after you put it on? Are you going to paint it or are you going to stain it?
It's going to be painted Mars black.
Okay, what I would do, what's worked very well for me, laminate it.
I actually thought about that, Tom, and I might end up doing that as my fallback. I wanted to try to see if I can still do it with the one piece. If I'm not successful, then I'm going to try the lamination piece. Maybe, take it down to a 30-second and laminate two pieces together, one at a time.
Yeah.
And then failing that, I might just drop to basswood. I know I can do it in basswood. I just didn't want to use basswood on the model because it's such a soft thing. I did use basswood on the sills or the gun ports, and I'm extremely unhappy, and I'm likely to pull that off and replace it with the maple.
See what you're running into is, for an extreme bend like that, whatever wood you're using, the inside diameter fibers have to compress an awful lot.
Right.
Now I tried to do it the purest way for many attempts on the models that I've built. What changed my mind, believe it or not, is an Anderson pane window that I bought many years ago with stained grain trim on inside. And lo and behold, the arc at the top of the window is all laminations. So if it's done in full size practice.
Yeah, I hear you. And I have thought about it, and I also thought, if I did do it as a lamination, I might even do it as 3 laminations, and then put sort of like a bead scroll or something on the face that's going to be facing outward, to hide a little bit of the lamination, but also add a little bit of decoration to that portion that's going to stand proud from the counter.
You're going to find that when you get to the head rails and the trail boards, it's the only way to go.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I will probably take that advice when I make my next attempts.
Sean, I presume you're considering the grain of the wood too?
Yes, yeah, and that is why on my 9th attempt, the previous attempts, the plank that I had used had a lot of grain in it. It also had some of this sap markings in it that you can see up here on this piece. It all came from one big plank. And I think some of the grain and some of the sap may have, I know in fact in one bend, the sap betrayed me and it split along where that sap line was. So John gave me some different planks of maple that are a lot clearer and have a lot less grain to them. So I'm going to try cutting a piece out of that and see how that'll work for me on my next attempt, and see if the grain will play into it.
Sean, you mentioned that you might have to use basswood. You've considered basswood, which is it's kind of a soft hardwood. Basswood can be burnished to a pretty good surface if that's part of the problem, and you probably already know that. The other thing, if you're laminating, Tom and Sean, would you laminate a finer grain piece, let's say on the inside of the curve, to a not quite so fine grain piece on the outside? In other words, talked about compression of the inside, which is inevitable. If it's a finer grain, a slower growing wood on the inside, would that help smooth the bend without splintering?
I'm not sure. I know that the lamination side of it, the thinner that you tried to bend, the less tension and compression between the thickness. So that's why lamination works so well. I don't know if grain would play into that or not. Again, I don't want to do 2 different types of wood. I would want to stick with the maple as much as possible. But yeah, it's something I'm going to be playing with. Hopefully, it doesn't take me 20 attempts to try to make this work.
It's kind of like a leaf spring, Ron. I mean, on the
Right.
inside, you've got an actually shorter piece to get the same overall radius, and each lamination's a bit longer, and there's less stretching necessary, or less compression necessary when you have thinner pieces building it up.
Yeah. So if I do lamination, it's likely going to be probably 3 pieces, probably not 2. But
It would have
see.
been built up from multiple pieces to begin with anyway, right? What you need to do is go find a piece of wood with a knot in it and use the grain.
There you go.
I actually, one of the other parts of all of this that I thought about was actually just making it out of 3 pieces and not bend the full radius around. And the reason for that is once the cap rail is on, this stern has stern davits. So whatever piece I put across here, it's going to be cut, and it'll be cut all the way through. So I thought, well, maybe I just do one piece. I can bend that piece around the top of the stern very well, and then do just a slight bend around the counter and down the side. My only issue with that is making sure that the radius is completely smooth. So when you look at the stern, I guess actually it's this way. When you look at the stern, I want that whole trim piece to look harmonious through the whole thing and not be a little bit jagged out here because I didn't quite get that bend correctly or whatnot. So that's why I'm trying to still stick with doing a full bend so that when I do cut it, the radiuses look right.
I understand that. I had that problem with the cap rails on my last model because I had to put a joint partway through, and maintaining a smooth curvature was difficult.
In this picture, you'll see that I've begun, as part of finishing the counter, I sanded and reduced the thickness of the stern, and then have begun planking the interior portions of that. I have yet to trim the pieces around the ports. I still have to go do that.
Would you consider holly? Because holly would bend around that very nicely.
And I have, because I do have some pieces of holly, I thought about that as well, and that might be an option.
It's pretty hard stuff too.
Yeah. So then the last thing that I've been working on was drawing the water line of the hull. And to do that, I ended up making my own water line marker. A friend of mine gave me some scrap mahogany, and I decided that I wanted to take that mahogany and make myself a waterline marker. I took some designs off of the internet, and from that I produced this waterline marker. It's about 1 foot tall. It runs along a groove between, this is actually made up of 4 pieces of lumber glued together so that it formed a slot between them. It rides up and down this slot. I have a master block that has a groove that was milled into it that has the pencil can hold into it. It also has a piece of wood that was cut in so that it would ride inside that groove. And then I have a top piece that then clamps the pen into place, or the pencil into place. And I just use lamp finials and recessed brass knurls into the holes so that I could screw and lock it into place. So it gives me a couple different things that I can do with it. I can bring it up to a level where I want to mark my water line, lock it into place, and then draw the water line in. But like when I was doing the tree nails, if I wanted a vertical marker, a line to get around projections and stuff like that, I can loosen it up so that it'll move up and down, and then putting a straight edge against my building board to hold it in place. I can then just run my pencil up and down the hull and back and forth to be able to get my vertical line in there so that my tree nails appear to be somewhat in line and not all over the place.
And here I thought you were contemplating a boat with a 12-inch draft.
There are futures in the plans for that as well, as you know. But that is my presentation.
Sean, where did you get your bamboo for your tree?
Actually, I bought 1,000 bamboo toothpicks and was trying to use those. I had saw on the NRG website where folks were using that as their way of pulling bamboo tree nails, but I've not been successful in either. It's the just bad bamboo that was used in making the toothpicks or not. I used the company that they recommended and it just didn't work for me.
Jack Bobbitt used to recommend a bamboo fishing pole that you can get from Wilcox.
No kidding.
You strip the brown right off the outside, and then he said that is excellent wood to use for tree nails. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. That might be a way, because I intended to do it in bamboo, because that's what everybody had talked about doing, and then stain it like a walnut or something like that to give it some contrast to the maple. But every attempt I could not draw a single bamboo one. I did use the technique that Tim had showed us, sorry, Tom, that Tim had showed us using the Van Valet tree nail maker, but that only goes down to I think it was 0.2 or 0.3 millimeters, and so it was about half as large as what I needed. I needed it to go all the way down to the 0.5 or 0.4. So I abandoned that suggestion. I did try taking a blank piece of brass, putting it in my lathe. I drilled the 75 drill bit into it and then tried to feed bamboo into that. And I got to a little bit of success, but it was just small pieces. I couldn't really get a very good piece out of it. And it would have taken me probably far longer to try to do it that way than drawing the cherry. I like the contrast of the cherry. I think it's going to darken a little over time. And I think it's going to show just the right contrast. If you step away from the model, you can barely see it. As you get down in closer, then you start to see that detail. So I think I'm probably going to stick with the cherry.
No reason for you not to stick with the cherry, but just it must be the bamboo that you had, because that's the exact same size that I went down to for my model. I was using bamboo that came out of an old steamer basket I picked up at a thrift sale or something. And it was drawing fairly well. It would occasionally break, but I didn't have problems at the level you're describing.
Yeah, I suspect the toothpicks that I bought were probably very cheap bamboo, and that's probably why I wasn't getting very far.
I know.
So my wife got 1,000 toothpicks that she can use in baking.
Jack used to talk a lot about what portion of the plant it came from. I guess you need the outer husk or something like that. But it's a moot point. You're happy with the cherry, go with it. Okay. Stop sharing, go to the next person. Which
You want Cheevers?
Sure.
So now I got to follow Sean. Is that the way it works?
Yep.
Let's see. I need the screen, so I'll hit the green button. All right. Green button. What do I want to share? I want to share this. Okay. Okay. In our last episode, Timmy was stuck in a well, and Lassie had gone for help. Am I muted? Am I muted?
No.
Okay. Now just a little view from the back porch this time, what I've done for the last month. Last month, I believe I told you all that I finished this deck, so I needed a little bit of break from the decking. So I went to work on the two models in the foreground. You can just barely see them. A couple of PT boats, an Elko 77 and an Elko 80. And so just a little bit of work this month. I didn't get a chance to do a tremendous amount of things. So I was working on putting the rub rails at the deck edge and the spray strakes at the chine. A little bit of you can kind of see how they went on. And they went on fairly easily. It was just a matter of making sure that they looked straight and fair when I was finished, and not like the drunken sailor put them on. So just a couple of different views. You can see in this view here how ran one piece actually from stern to bow and cut one off, run the other one by, and just let a trusty clamp hold it in place while the glue sets. And then it was important to take a good look to make sure I had kept the symmetry going that I wanted. I was fairly pleased with that. This is the Elko 80. And at that point, I shot at the bow, you can see. A little bit of putty, and that'll go away. Then I switched over to the Elko 77, which I personally think is a much more interesting looking hull, and repeated the process. The rub strake went on the deck edge, and the spray strake went on at the chine. Again, we were looking for symmetry at the end of the process, and it looked pretty good. So I went on to the next phase. The next phase on the Elko 77 was to make this sort of a very interesting deck house. And I think if you read the history of the PT boat, you find out that this thing was very expensive and labor intensive to build because of all the curves involved. Well, what I decided to do was, first thing I did was I milled up a block of wood and laid out reference lines. Then I with spray adhesive, I affixed a plan view at the top and a profile view at the side. And then because everything needed to be referenced off of a level base, a plane that's parallel to the base of the design, basically, in order to get your machine gun tubs in the correct attitude on this deck house. And then so before anything else happened, I drilled them, and then I drilled the four corners of what will be the pilot house when it's finally opened up. Then I took and set in place, you see one right here where the arrow is and one right here. I drilled for some screws to hold the scrap in place for the various cuts that had to happen. Because the first cuts were actually to cut the profile. And you can see here, I cut the profile, top and bottom. And then after I cut the bottom profile, I put the screws in. And when I cut the top profile, I put the screws in to hold the scrap in place. So that the next cut will be to cut the plan view of this deck house out. And it'll follow, you see this crazy looking curve, comes down like this. Cut that out. And once I'm finished cutting that out, I will sand that to that line right there. I'll cut it heavy and sand to the line. And then I will be able to pop the top and bottom scrap off. And out of that will emerge a very rough deck house. And on the underside, I will probably I will take a compass and I'll mark a line 3/16 inside of that outside edge. And then I will hollow out the material that's inside of that. And so the only fitting I have to do at that point is to fit that last little bit to the deck, to this deck here that you can see is quite a bit of shear and camber, including a little bit of reverse camber up at the bow. So that's kind of what I've been up to, other than there was a side trip to Gene's Puzzle Palace to have him, he was gracious enough to photo etch some depth charge sets for me that I'll put together and put on the models. And that was fun. And so I'm there, and then we're back to the front here. And I just wanted to say two things before I turn this over to the next guy. And that is, while Sean was talking about his model and his tree nails and everything, I'm over looking at the model, which is sitting over here on the table. And let me tell you, it's nice. You better have it. It's really worth, and it passes the close-up look test. It's really good. The tree nails are just subtle as he says they are. Very nice. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was on the subject of laminations. When my dad got into woodworking after I moved to Virginia, he was trying to build a Windsor chair. The Windsor chair, if you know, has a nice curved back on it. And he was steaming, or actually I think he was just soaking in hot water, the oak pieces that would form the back. And I think he told me he broke the first two, and he kind of was almost done at that point. And so I suggested to him that he take the next piece of oak and he cut it into, I suggested 1/8 of an inch thick strips, and then soak those in the hot water and then put them in a forming jig, but keep them in the order that he cut them off the raw board. And he did that, and then he steamed them in place, and then when they dried, he popped them out of the jig, applied the glue, put them back in the jig and let it dry. And when he was finished, you had to look really hard to see that he had laminated the back of that chair. So that's another piece of it is, if you're going to do it in multiple layers, it's not going to work, I think, with what Sean's trying to do. But make sure you keep those wood layers in the order that they came off the raw board. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, John.
Stop share. Stop share. Stop share. Stop share. All right. Okay.
All righty, let's go down to the bottom right. Let's see, Bill Brown, you still there? I don't see a face anymore. Oh, you're muted. Do you have anything to share today?
Just making a little bit of progress on the Chris Craft. I won't take too much time, but it's, and excuse the rubber band that's part of my clamping system. But working from stern to bow, making some progress on it. And as I said last time I showed this, it's the lift method. This is the first time I've ever done it, and getting a lot of support from my friends on how to do it. So it's my first scratch built attempt. So
It's looking good.
thanks.
I'm looking forward to see how that progresses. Love Chris Crafts. All right, Mr. Proudly, anything today?
I just have a quick study the by Euro model.
The audio really broke up. You mind repeating that?
Yes, I'm trying to find out if anybody else has built the Ajax by Euro model.
Not I. Anyone else? Nope. Sorry.
Okay, that was it. Thanks.
Stuart?
I finished up my scratch-built model of the Mediterranean Merchantman. If you let me share the screen, let me put that up. There it is. You got it.
It's still coming up on my screen anyway. Says Stuart Wynn has started screen sharing, but it hasn't finished. Could be a.
That's all I've got on mine. Not there yet?
Not on my screen. Anyone else seeing it?
Nope.
Maybe try stop sharing and try it one more time. Maybe.
Well, my computer might else come back.
I'm gonna stop your sharing and we'll come back to you. Huh. Well, I clicked on something that says stop participant sharing, but it didn't do anything. So much for being the moderator. It's not working.
He broke it.
Yeah.
Stuart may have to leave the meeting and come back on.
Try double clicking on your screen.
Yeah. I can't do anything. I have a command that says stop the participant sharing, but it does nothing. So yeah, it might be take Ryland's suggestion, leave and come back. Maybe that'll help. Or he has left. No? Okay. Well, maybe I can. Are you there, Stuart? He doesn't have a microphone at the moment. Can I remove him? Kick him out of the meeting. Put in waiting room. Okay, I couldn't make him leave, but I put him in the waiting room. So where were we? Ryland, you don't have anything to share? Josh's.
No, I do not.
Ryland, you don't have anything to share other than a baseball game, I think. So we'll move on to Alfred. Do you want to share your current project with us, Alfred?
There you go. I just unmuted.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's very rough, for a first timer and a beginner, but I'm just going to hold a picture up. Can you see that?
Let me change view so you're full screen. There you go. Yep. Wow, that's quite a nice looking vessel.
That's the schooner, the Liliputs. She was built as the Annie Leonard in Oxford, Maryland, and it was my grandfather's schooner, and he ran around the bay for about 70 years. So anyway, that's the vessel. She was converted, of course, to power, but that's the schooner Lil M. Phillips. And this is just the beginning part of what I'm doing. If you can see this, basically, Raylan stop down. And it's getting there slowly. And I've got 4 more planks to put in. But She's at 148 scale. And so once this is done, and this is not even sanded yet, taken down, but there she is. Um, and it has a long way to go. You know, she was a center border. So it's going to be getting there a little at a time. So I have a long way to go, just learning. And, but it's like a real boat, you know, you put every plank on just like you would building a real vessel. And like the gentleman said earlier, growing up in Deltaville, when I was a child, I could walk from my home out to the main road, and there were 10 boat builders on my lane. You know, building mostly all dead rises, of course, but that's sort of how it was growing up here. So that's all I have for that project. I'll have a lot of other questions later on, and of course, and advice I'd like to get as well.
That photograph shows a beautiful vessel, and I think your model looks like it's going very well. The whole form looks really good. Looks like you know what you're doing to me.
No, I just take my time on one plank at a time.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Stuart Wynn's connecting again. You want to try again, Stuart?
Oh, I'm back. I don't know what happened there. I had a big crash and had to pull off the side of the road and roll all the windows down. Reboot from scratch. Let's just skip that. I'll save it for when I can bring it into the meeting.
If you say so, we can come back and try again at the end if you want.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Our guest, Joe, turned his video off or lost it. I don't know if he's still there. Did you have something you wanted to show, Joe? You're muted, by the way.
As a guest, I really didn't. I didn't prepare anything.
Okay. Well,
I'm
you're welcome
working
next
on.
time if you'd like.
Well, yes, I'm working on Cheerful. I've got Winchelsea in the backdrop of that. I'm doing a restoration of a Bath, Maine. I'm sorry, a Gloucester schooner for a neighbor. And I was just talking to somebody offline that said it's a sailor's model, and it was one I didn't want to do, but he was so enthusiastic and so wanting it restored. It's called the Laura Goulart. It didn't have an illustrious career. Lost a man overboard, sunk in the harbor at Bath, Maine, and sat at the bottom for 15 years. Not the model, the actual boat. They resurrected it. So there is some history on the boat, but it's been in the family for just a number of years. So that enthusiastic pleading of the neighbor got me to do that. And maybe when I come back again, I can show you where I am with that.
All right. Look forward to it. Okay, let's see. Screen's jumped around a little bit. Hank, do you have anything you want to show today?
No, nothing to show today, but I can tell that I got the hang of using my mini lathe, and it's working out really good for tapering the yard. So good toy.
Cool. Already did John and Alfred. Mr. Fox, you have anything today? You're muted, Bill.
Nothing to report. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Joshua?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I could give a quick update. So my apologies to Bill Brown and Tom, who've probably seen this already a few times, but this is my 150 scale black pearl that I've been working on for some time. This picture is actually taken back in November. lot of my time has been spent working on the yards, getting all the hardware on the yards, foot ropes and blocks, which is at this point largely complete. And then also working on sort of prepping all the masts with all the related rigging. So my hope is really to sort of assemble this thing as complete as possible so that I can basically just tie it into the ship once I start laying this stuff in. So right now I've been working on the sails. It's actually using a method that Ron Nielsen had presented at the Northeast Conference, where you sandwich a printer paper between two pieces of silk span. And so this is the mizzen topsail. My plan is to set all the topsails and have basically the lower sails furled. And so this, you can see the bolt rope, and I've got basically this is the back side of the sail. So I'm going to have it billowed out. It's got 28 gauge wire enveloped in around the edges of the sail so that I can form the sail. The back side of the sail, the 3 points would be basically plastered to the sail. And so on this side, they would kind of be fingering out because the wind would be pushing those out just to sort of add that effect. So this is kind of what I've been working on for the Pearl. And the other project I've been working on is the IJN Heavy Cruiser Megami. This is kind of a status of where it's at now. Just adding all of the brass etch, and a lot of these are basically just dry fitted on right now. The superstructure and the turrets are just basically dry fitted. Everything else is glued down. But this is my first kind of go with photo etch. This is the bridge replacement. This was all pieced together. It's a bit tedious, but I think it's pretty rewarding when you get through it.
Finally, brass.
And the one thing I wanted to show was if anybody has used these rhinestone picker pencils, they're basically waxed pencils that I discovered are really great for picking up these very small pieces of brass. And you glue one side of it, and then when the glue starts to set, that it just releases it really easy. So you can just put it in a pencil sharpener and have as dull or as pointy as a tip as you want. And you can pick these up at Amazon for like $7 for 10 of them, and one will probably last you a long time.
What were they called again?
They're called rhinestone picker pencils. A lot of the rhinestone users use them to pick up the gems, and they're just wrapped wax pencils.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you can run them in a pencil sharpener to tighten them up, and it's great for placing these small 1/350 size brass etch parts. Like this is a slider door for this turret, and to try to pick that up with your fingers, or you use a pair of tweezers, and it'll just you run the risk of it blinking off into Neverland. Pencils just add a little bit more control.
Josh, I've used those as well. I think they work fantastic. It's changed how I model small parts using those as well. And I think I picked up like 15 of them from Amazon, and I've still got the very first one that I've been using. They last forever.
I just wanted to share that. So.
That's an interesting idea. I think I can make use of that as well.
Yeah, I'm wise to that penny trick, though.
Yeah. I saw his penny recently. That's a good one.
That's what I got.
All right, thanks, Joshua. How about you, Don?
Here we go. Yeah, I'm still nursing a bad back, so things are going slow, but I don't know how well that'll show, but all these little tedious small assemblies, I wanted that to look like a canvas covered balsa or caulk life ring. And I used a canvas type duct tape on it. It looks great. But it's just a piece of plywood with the duct tape wrapped over it. But that took 3 days, believe it or not, to get it right, and several prototypes. The exhaust coming out of the motor box, there's 2 of these, and those turned out pretty good. So here's the big girl. I don't know if I'll ever do one this big again.
That's why your back's out.
Yeah, it'll fill the tub. This is the dead rise that I'm building for the museum that we're going to raffle off for the hospital here in Gloucester. It's an old wooden one. I don't know how much of this you can see.
I see pretty well.
I'm filling out the house. So there's some sub-assemblies that aren't in there. The wheels out, and there's a cabinet that goes inside, and a gauge cluster and some other things. But being it's an older boat, it doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. There is a friend of mine, Donnie Mitchell, up near Annapolis. I kind of modeled it off his boat. His is converted for sport fishing. The door on the house is way bigger than normal. And he gave me some dimensions, and I used that door dimension, and somebody looked at it and says, man, that's a big door. But that's the way it's going to be. So, but anyhow, she's all cross planked. I didn't use plywood flooring. I used deck boards for the deck, and I milled all the lumber. There's a few pieces of smaller pieces of basswood, but I'm pretty good at getting down to like 1/16 by 1/16 on the table saw. It just takes a little bit of time, but man, does it waste a lot of wood. But so far it's been fun, and hopefully we'll be partnering with some other people here in Gloucester and Matthews to show this and use it to raise money. There's a little brewery here that we're going to work with, the brewery here in Matthews. So hopefully we'll raise some money for the hospital, for the things they've done for the community too, especially now. But anyhow, that's what I have.
It's looking good.
All right, thank you.
Let's see. Floyd, are you working on anything you'd like to show? Want to show us your Ford truck?
Well, yeah, I can. I actually have some pictures of the ship I built my son. I'm going to try to rotate the whole computer
cool.
here. Let me see here. You guys, is that showing up?
Yeah, fairly well.
I think I've got about 150 pictures of the actual project, but this was some of the ones that I took as I was building it, just to kind of show some of the construction status as I went along. And like I said, this was no design or anything, no specific ship, just something for my son to play with. And it is fairly large. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but I would say it's every bit of 2.5 to 3 foot long by 12 inches across.
Drop the picture down, because there's your son's in the picture at the top. Will give us here you go, the idea of the scale there.
So he was supervising.
That's pretty big.
Like I said, this was his 4th birthday present. He's 14 now, so this was 10 years ago. Okay. And I'll drop down here a little bit. You can kind of see there's a little bit of detail if I can get the right picture. There we go. So I cut, deck steps for it, made all the cannons. I mean, everything you see there is I made it. So, and it's just pine. It's just literally, I took pine and ripped it down. And whatever I could make, I made, and whatever I needed, I made. And it was a, first time out, and I'm hoping to do something a little more realistic next time. But I still have the ship. My son has kind of outgrown it, but it's on display upstairs in my above my wood shop. So
if he doesn't want it now, he'll want it later for sure. He must have been thrilled by that.
Yeah, I'm certain. And he actually has a bunch of wood toys I made him as he was a little kid for several of his Christmases. That was most of what he got was stuff I made him, and I've got it all. So he'll get it back one day. Hopefully my grandkids will take it.
Cool. That's awesome. Let's see. All right, Mr. Martin, Lee, do you have anything today?
No, I'll pass this week. Thank you.
All right. How about you, Gene? Other than your upcoming presentation, anything? Andy's, that is. Nope. Okay. Kevin?
I'm still plodding along with my African Queen model. Don't know if you can see this, if it shows up on the screen a whole lot. Started working on the anchor winch that goes on the bow of it. About the only thing it's not scratch built is the gears that go on it. I took the gears off of an old cordless drill that died on me, but everything else is pretty well scratch built. And as far as the design for it, I managed to find a couple pictures online that showed Humphrey Bogart standing next to it on the bow of the African Queen. So I've used that as the design for this. And still not quite happy with the color. I tried one color that was too dark and one that was too light. So I think I'll have to kind of mix them together to make the color that I want onto it, but I'm still kind of plodding along, and when I get done, it'll actually work. So
scavenging old parts is as scratch as it gets. You don't have to cut the gears yourself.
Right.
So
That's
some
awesome.
years back, this is many years ago, I came across I guess the boat that was actually used in the movie. They had it at a hotel motel down in Key Largo, Florida. I don't know if they still have it or whatever, but I remember seeing it and it was floating.
Unfortunately, yeah, I've seen pictures of it as it was in Key Largo, and there was a lot of changes between how it looked when it was in Key Largo and what it actually looked like in the movie.
Okay.
They had actually taken, they'd put a new boiler, new steam engine on it. The lockers underneath the seats were gone. There were a lot of changes between what it looked like then and what it looked like in the movie. So
Okay.
I'm trying to make it look as much like it did in the movie as I can.
Yeah, sure. It's great.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Ron, anything today?
Just something quick. When Josh was showing his stuff, he had clamps like these. I ordered some from Micromart years ago, and they're great clamps. When I ordered them more recently, I got this. This is a piece of crap. It's not the same at all. These, however, are being sold at all places in Kroger's grocery stores. I think they're about 49 cents. So every time they put them out, I grab about half a dozen of them. This is a very nice clamp. I think it's about 49 cents at Kroger's. Unexpected place to look for modeling equipment. That's all I got.
Take it where you find it.
Yep.
Mr. Rosario, anything today?
I am between projects.
Between projects, all righty.
Yeah.
That just leaves Mr. Berger, Santa Claus.
All righty, there we go. Well, let me get this set up. All righty. All right, here we go. Well, this month I worked on brass, and only had a few weeks since I was visiting our son earlier, so it kind of took away a whole week's worth of modeling time. So I'm way behind schedule. Anyways, these are davits for the depth charge racks, the K-gun racks, and they're made up of brass, as you can see, with some photo etched fittings on the sides. I'm not sure what they're called, but that's where the mechanisms or the what do you call it? Anyway, I don't know what it's called, but I'll show you pictures. There it is. That's for hooking onto the depth charge for loading them onto the K-gun. And these were photo etched, photo etched parts that were soldered together and assembled. Here are the davits
This is a 2-hour meeting.
ready for
I've been trying to gracefully back out. They're gonna have a break.
and it required a lot of cargo hooks. And I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to represent.
This guy is incredible.
Well, thanks, Ron. Fox. First, I etched them, but then to flesh them out, since they did turn out to be flat, I sweated on some solder, and it makes for a nicely shaped hook. And there you can see they're only about 2 millimeters in width, so they're pretty tiny, but very, very detailed. Okay, here we go. And here, pre-rigged some of the davits so that I could then insert them onto the racks. And that's what they look like mounted. They would just latch on to a depth charge and hoist them onto the K-gun as needed. And usually they would just clamp them or hook them onto the rack just to keep them out of the way. Moving on to hose reels and such. Again, brass etched and then all soldered together. The beading around the discs is I think maybe 0.4 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter brass, which was soldered on. And then the rest of it was all soldered together. Yeah, here they are, painted up, ready for installation and fleshed out with rope. And there were several different styles for the hawsers, for smaller ropes, for the what do you call that? The cable, shore connection cables, and so on, hoses, and so forth. Then I turned my attention to the mast. The mast is all made up brass, various bits and pieces. Some of it was etched, such as the plates or the platforms, but mostly it's made up of tubing and just flat pieces. I used 2 types of soldering iron for the heavy pieces for mounting to the post itself. I used my resistance solder because I can apply, it's almost like spot welding. I mean, I can apply a lot of heat in a very small spot very quickly without risk of disassembling nearby pieces. And then for other pieces, such as these little supports, I would use a traditional soldering iron because I wasn't dealing with a lot of surface area. The problem is heat sink. When you try this is a solid piece of tubing here, or a rod. So when you apply a standard soldering iron to it, you can sit there all day and it's never going to get hot enough to melt the solder. But the resistance solder cranked up a bit. I have a American Beauty 250 watt unit. So when that thing glows, it'll burn through the brass if you're not careful. And there's just another view of the platform. There'll be an SK radar on the top. I'm not sure the nomenclature of the radar that sits on this panel. And just another view. I've got a myriad of little bits and pieces yet to solder onto the mast before I prime and paint it. But that's where it is today. And it's pretty fragile, extremely fragile. I dropped it once and spent the next 2 hours reassembling some of the bent pieces. So not to do that again. So that's where I am with this project.
What scale is that, Gene?
This is 1/4 inch scale. The DE is about, maybe about 7 foot long, maybe. So this mast stands, oh, I don't know, maybe about 18 inches tall, or maybe a little longer, maybe something like that. So that's it. That's all I've got for this showing.
Gene, this is Bill. Just a general question on your photo etching. When you're photo etching brass, what's about the thickest you can do, or what you find you can do when you're photo etching the material?
Well, I can do just about any thickness. Well, up to reasonable, maybe about 30 thousandths, maybe, but it takes forever, and then you get a lot of undercutting. It's almost pointless at that. But unless there's a piece that you want, maybe that you want that for, if you want to go for deep relief, I would use that. Typically, I use no more than about 15 thousandths, mostly 10 thousandths for structural pieces.
10 to 15 mil. Okay.
10 and well, actually 10 and smaller. I use 5 and 10 typically, because 5 at quarter-inch scale is about a quarter-inch, almost a quarter-inch thickness. Or is it 10 thousandths? No, 10 thousandths is about almost a half-inch scale.
And the other question I had for you is, what software graphics tool do you use to create the negatives for the etch?
I just use an old copy of Photoshop.
Photoshop?
Yeah, I mean, because all I have to do is be able to trace using their layers tool, draw lines and circles, and from that I can derive arcs or what have you. It's not really the right tool for this kind of work, but it works for me, and just simple drawings, filling in spaces, black and white stuff, stuff like that. Photoshop can, seems to do what I need, and I've got enough experience with it. It's what's the old adage about the best tool to use, so it works for me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Awesome as always. Did I miss anybody? Okay. How about 5-minute or so break if anyone needs to head before we go on to presentation? No one needs it? Shall we move on? Okay, we'll move on then. I will again stop and start the recording.
Greg, I'm going to have to leave. At this particular time, my grandchildren are here, and I have to be on duty.
Understood.
So
Thanks for joining us. You can always come back and watch Dean's presentation once I post it on the website, or hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, especially the photo etching. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Al, say hello to Raynell Smith for me, if you would, please. Tell her Ron Lewis.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
She still owns the house next to me. She's trying to sell it, so I still she still comes by once in a while, and certainly will be glad to tell her. What's your name again?
Ron Lewis. Now, is she still running Naughty Nails?
Yeah.
Good.
She is. Now that Steve Captain Crunch passed away, right?
Yes.
Her husband.
Very sorry to hear that.
Okay. Yeah. I remember when they first moved here. Thank you. I will certainly tell her.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining.